fourth session in our learning series on fundamentals of blockchain. And as part of this series, we're diving a little bit deeper into blockchain technologies. In the very first one, we introduced you to just the very basics of blockchain technologies. That was with Christina from UNICEF. And then we talked about the opportunities and challenges of using blockchains, looking at risks and ethical consideration with colleagues from the Joint Inspection Unit. And in the last session, session 3, we looked at different applications from across the UN of blockchain technology. So we looked at blockchain for financial transactions, for supply chain optimization, and for land registration, to really see that this is a technology that is not just relevant for someone out there, but really for us at the UN as well. And today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into one of the most prominent, probably, applications of blockchain technologies, and that is cryptocurrencies. And as we can see, we're hosting this session for the first time, not as a webinar, but as a meeting, because we'd really like it to be an open discussion, to be as informal as possible. If you're comfortable with coming on video, if your bandwidth allows it, please feel free. Presenters tell us they like it if they're not just looking at black squares. But if it doesn't work, then by all means stay offline. And we're later on open to Q&A throughout the session, as well as at the end of the session. Any kind of dialogue is really very welcome there, and we find is the richest part of running any kind of webinar. So it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for the day. Mehran is a blockchain product manager at UNICEF, and I think he's joined us for UNIN webinars twice before. Prior to joining UNICEF, Mehran was a senior blockchain consultant at Deloitte in Canada, and he's been teaching blockchain at the New York University, and also as part of a hands-on UNIN course that we ran back in the good old days when you could still do things in person. I think it was in 2019, I think. I'm really happy that Mehran is joining us today because he's incredibly good at taking complicated concepts and breaking them down into very simple language so that everyone, including myself, can understand it. Mehran, that's a real skill, and no pressure at all from our side, but thank you for joining us, and handing over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Johanna. Hi, everyone. My name is Mehran. I'm a blockchain project manager at UNICEF, and today I'll be walking you through our, blockchain and cryptocurrency course. My heart is pounding, but I guess one of the benefits of having the world move online is none of you can tell unless I tell you. So today we'll do a quick refresher on the fundamentals of blockchain. So just to, there's a lot of technical concepts, so I just wanted to brush up on that today. And then we wanted to jump into some of the big cryptocurrency platforms and how we would actually interact with these cryptocurrency platforms with something called wallets. And so let's dive in. And so before we actually kick off, Johanna was thinking that we actually run a quick poll just to make sure everyone is on the same page. And the question that she's going to ask everyone is, what is a blockchain? So Johanna?
Yeah, you know what? This is the demonstration effect, obviously, because I'm logged into another device. Because this webcam is broken, I can't actually launch the poll. So we may have to go without it because I can't actually do it.
Let's see.
Oh, you can enable it. Fantastic.
Awesome. So I'll run the poll for about 30 seconds. Let's see, people are starting to vote in.
This is really a trick question to see who has joined the previous sessions and who hasn't. Around, what are we seeing?
We're seeing a lot of people answer a ledger, and we're seeing second place, a program to store information.
Great.
3 more people remaining. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what it is? What's the correct answer?
Oh, I thought you would do that. So the interesting thing with blockchain is it is a ledger. It is a place where we can store information, and you can build cryptocurrencies on top of it. So I'm not sure what the right answer is, Johanna. Maybe you can chime in a little bit.
I thought it was a ledger.
Ah, got it.
But clearly all of them are correct. If the expert says so, then there we go.
Yeah, there are ways you can kind of tweak things. This reminds me of university where you'd get those multiple choice questions on exams, and you're like, it could be all of the above, it could be 1 of 2, it could be 2 of 2. But yeah, there are ways that these can be applied. in some sense. But I think, at its fundamental, blockchains are ledgers. Let me just get this out of the way. It's a technology where we can store information, and then the way that blockchains work is instead of one party hosting all the information, we have the information. And one of the simplest examples I can think of is imagine a game of football without a scorekeeper. And so all the players that are playing the game are responsible for keeping score in their head. And if one person that's playing the game is lying about the score, they'll be corrected by their colleagues or team players. So, say Johanna and I are playing soccer with everyone or football with everyone, and then, I lie about the score. I'm like, hey, our team is winning by 3. Johanna and everyone else playing the game might be like, no, Mehran, you're wrong. The score is actually this. And so blockchains are powerful tools to store information and validate information in a way that we no longer have to rely on centralized parties. Initially, blockchains were used for very simple types of data. So we were just looking at things like storing value. But an innovation came out, I think, around 5 years ago, where people were like, let's see what else we can store on blockchains. And so people introduced the concept of something called a smart contract, which effectively meant that we can add code on top of these ledgers per se. And so now people are exploring different ways to store different information on blockchains with these smart contracts. And then in addition to representing different types of data, because code is, it can apply any type of logic, we're also seeing ways to use the data in different ways as well without relying on centralized parties. And I think the example that is highlighted on this slide is imagining a blockchain that stores money for everyone, and then perhaps at the end of the month, have some code in place to automatically deduct someone's rent without having to reach out to anyone, because maybe the two parties agreed on something prior to this actually being in place. And so another poll that we have is to understand what are the properties of blockchain. Let's see if I have this as well. Maybe this one oh yes, I do. Okay, I'm going to launch another quick poll. So which one of these are not a key feature of blockchains? And it seems like most people are getting it right. So immutability, transparency, and centralization. Immutability means whatever gets added to a blockchain is permanent. Transparency means whatever gets added to the blockchain is available for everyone to see. And then centralization implies that one or two parties control all the data. So which one of these are not a key feature of blockchain?
And I have Mehran, this time it was just one answer. It's actually the correct one.
Yeah. So I'm just going to end the poll now. It seems like most people got it. Blockchains are not centralized. And on a true blockchain, whatever gets added, it is permanent. So for that one person that did select immutability, it is a word that's intimidating and tricky to understand, which is why we wanted to reinforce it with this poll. So don't worry, I think it took me a while to understand what immutability and transparency and all that kind of stuff meant. So yeah, jumping into that. So key features. So in addition to being transparent and immutable, because the technology is spread out across multiple parties, these are infrastructures where people don't trust each other, but then the technology enables people to trust one another. Because a lot of people are running their own copies of the information, if people start lying, they'll start correcting one another. So there's an aspect of security that's enforced as well. And then because you can programmatically add code, you can add information, there's ways to coordinate different things on blockchains without decentralized authorities. And so I believe in prior sessions, you did go through some of the use cases, but here's a neat diagram that we use at UNICEF to understand some of the key things that are possible on blockchain. So you can store data, you can exchange value, and you can make things operate in a more efficient manner with the smart contracts and coding aspect of blockchains as well. And so I think the thing to think about is blockchain is a technology where data can be stored, and then it's up to developers or program managers or people in business to determine what that actually can be. And so one of the first use cases are Bitcoin, but people are now exploring credentials, they're exploring financial markets, they're exploring supply chains, all of that kind of stuff. They're trying to see if the technology can be applied and in this decentralized way so that things can be improved, things can be transparent, things can be done in a more secure manner, given that the world is becoming more global. And so with a lot of these explorations, we've started seeing two types of blockchains kind of come into play. I think a lot of us are familiar with Bitcoin and Ethereum. These are public blockchains, which means that as long as you have internet, you can actually write and read information to these blockchains. And so all of us right now can go to the Bitcoin or Ethereum code base, we can download it, we can run the software and then connect to the rest of the network. If we want to send Bitcoin to one another, we can do that. If we want to send something on the Ethereum blockchain, we can do that. And so think of it as a park. Parks are usually accessible to everyone, and there's no rules per se to do anything at the park. A lot of large organizations have also started looking at blockchains, and a big concern that they have is if I put my data on a public infrastructure, does that compromise my ability to be competitive in the market? Does that give up secrets that I normally wouldn't give up in the industry? And so they've started taking public blockchain platforms and they started tailoring it for enterprise use cases. And so they're building, I guess, private blockchains where they select the people that have access to that infrastructure. And so, when you have something that's completely public and when you have something that's completely private, there's also something in the middle where they I guess, entertain both sides of the blockchain spectrum per se. And so public blockchains typically imply that everyone can participate and in some sense, interact with the data that's there as well. And then private blockchains imply the opposite. And so typically people are dictating who has access, who can read, who can write. And so we'll see a lot of enterprises kind of set up private blockchains to figure out how they work, and maybe even try to have consumers and customers interact with them as well, because they want to protect certain parts of their information. And so that has created this third kind of realm of blockchain called the Consortium Hybrid, where certain parts of the information are public, certain parts of the blockchain are private. And so that way they're able to be transparent while leveraging security of some of their stuff. And so, the UN, for example, we look at public blockchains, but we also look at private blockchains because we realize that a lot of the information that we interact with is sensitive. And so we still want to explore with blockchain, but we want to make sure that the information that we have is protected as well. And so these are the three types of blockchains that we typically interact with. I'll pause there before I jump into the next section. Are there any questions on that brief primer on blockchain?
Johanna, this is Nines from UNFPA, if I may.
Sure, please go ahead.
Of course.
Mehran, on the previous slide, for the single organization, you call it trusted. Can you please explain? Because my understanding is that in order for it to be trusted, there should be some sort of transparency. That means there should be multiple ledgers. Are you telling us that within a single organization, there could still be multiple ledgers?
Yes, so the reason that we've listed it as trusted, and we've actually put it in quotations, is because the ledger is only as trusted as the reputation of the company. So for example, we're seeing a lot of banks set up their own blockchains. And in a sense, we already have consumers and customers that interact with the banks frequently, and they trust the infrastructure that they provide to, I guess, do their finances. And so now we're seeing these same organizations spin up private blockchains. And if we assume that the customers still trust them, you know, they can run up multiple nodes. And so the idea there is for global single organizations, they might have nodes in North America, they might have some in Asia, Africa. And so it's a blockchain that's controlled by one party, but they have multiple instances of the ledger for all of their entities around the world. So that's like one potential implementation.
Thank you very much, Mehran. And one follow-up question, sorry. For the UN organization, would you advise that transactions are verified across different agencies? For example, if we record a transaction, then let's say UNICEF should verify it, or you're still okay if all the transactions are verified within the organization?
Yeah, and so that comes closer to the middle type of blockchain, so the Consortium Hybrid. So at the UN, there's multiple UN agencies, and so in this blockchain, let's assume UNFPA, UNICEF, UNDP, WFP is each running the blockchain software, and they're all connected to one another. And when that happens, usually there's an agreement before that the people that are joining this blockchain are all trusted parties on this network. And so yes, there might be a scenario where once the information is posted on the blockchain, maybe UNICEF is verifying information or on behalf of another UN agency, or UNFPA is verifying information on behalf of other organizations as well. But there is that step before things get shared to the blockchain that, you know, say UNICEF is publishing information, they need to verify that everything that they put is trusted information, and then they can share it on this ledger that all the other UN agencies have access to, so that things can actually get added securely and properly. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much, Mehran.
Okay. No problem. Are there other questions?
Adolfo from PAO, WHO. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Sorry that my camera is not working, but just a quick question. I'm new to blockchain, so I was wondering if a hybrid blockchain can be applied to projects, let's say a construction project where we keep certain information, so the contractor will be part of this blockchain, but we keep, for example, the budget information private only to PAHO personnel and not the contractor.
Yeah, yes, definitely. So in my prior role at Deloitte, I was working with their blockchain team, and they actually worked with a lot of enterprises that had, you know, these types of business requirements. And so, for example, one of the ones that we worked on was a diamond supply chain. And so in that supply chain, we had producers, we had manufacturers, we had retailers that were coming onto the network and exchanging different information about diamonds. And so, you know, some of that information was proprietary and they didn't want to send it onto the network, and it wasn't relevant to the other participants of the consortium blockchain. And so they'll keep that off chain, and they'll only put the information that's relevant for the supply chain to move forward. And so in the construction use case, I think it's critical to identify, you know, who are the people in this blockchain? Why are you using the blockchain? And once that's determined, what is the minimum amount of data that's required on this shared network to push your business processes forward? So that's kind of the approach that I would take.
Thank you.
No worries. Awesome.
Thanks for taking a moment, Mehran. Shall we dive into the cryptocurrencies?
Yes, of course. So cryptocurrencies often have this common misconception that Bitcoin is blockchain, blockchain is Bitcoin. And the reason that this happened was when Bitcoin was first introduced, the innovation of blockchain came out at the same time. And so the way that Bitcoin was introduced was this unknown entity named Satoshi Nakamoto created this white paper or this document that explained a way to do peer-to-peer value transfer or cash transfer without needing to go through a bank. And if you go through the white paper, one of the key things that was described was how they did the peer-to-peer cash system. And that's where the inception of blockchain started. And so I think in the earlier days, there was a lot of misconceptions with people thinking like, oh, Bitcoin is blockchain, blockchain is Bitcoin, and that's the only thing that you can do with the technology. But since then, people have abstracted that technology layer away from Bitcoin. And so now blockchain is just a way to verify data and transfer value without going through a centralized party. And Bitcoin is a use case of blockchains. And so we saw this use case pop up. The white paper came out around 2008. And I think a lot of people were having a hard time trusting their banks. A lot of people were getting displaced, and so they lost access to their money. And people found that unfair and unjust. And so people were like, okay, we have the internet, we have a way to verify information. Can we leverage the technology in some way so that if I have money, no matter what happens to me, I should always have access to my money. And so people found a way to store digital assets using this blockchain technology. And given that it's on the internet, people were now able to transact internationally, transact through the internet to exchange value from one party to another. And so I think some of the key benefits of using cryptocurrency, typically, because this is a global phenomenon, we're seeing people using cryptocurrency around the world. For people to use cryptocurrencies around the world, they have to do it in a way that's transparent. And so when people are moving money around, you can see from account to account who's moving what money. People that normally don't have access to financial services because maybe the government won't allow it, maybe they don't have the right papers, maybe they don't have a way to store their money. As long as they have internet now, they're actually able to access different financial services. Given that all of this happens to the internet, people are exploring if this is a cheaper and faster alternative to using banks to move money around, to pay people, all that kind of stuff. And then there is an element of the smart contracts that can also be applied to the currencies that are created on top of blockchains. And so now we're seeing a lot of financial services start popping up on various blockchain platforms. Just to put things into perspective, I think one of the first times we gave this course, we typically keep track of how much money is flowing in the cryptocurrency space. And so I think in 2019, the market cap for the largest cryptocurrency, which was Bitcoin, was 150 billion almost, and one Bitcoin was worth around $8,000. I think this week we took another screen grab of the cryptocurrency top 5, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware, and I think this value may have gone up just this week. So one Bitcoin is now around $52,000 per coin, and then the market cap of just that cryptocurrency alone is almost $1 trillion. And so people are learning about the technology, people are becoming more familiar with what blockchain and cryptocurrency is. And so they're starting to move a lot of their value into blockchains. And so this brings up a lot of common questions like, what is a coin? What is a cryptocurrency? What is a token? And so today I'll walk through, I guess, some of the key definitions of this space. And so blockchains that are, I guess, equipped to transfer value, they have their own currency. And so the Bitcoin blockchain has a currency called Bitcoin. The Ethereum blockchain has a currency called Ether. And so these currencies are able to move value around, and they're native to the actual software. So those are called coins, and their purpose is typically to move value around. With smart contracts, with code, people are creating new alternatives to these cryptocurrencies. And so people are coding new, I guess, currencies, and those are called tokens. Typically, tokens have a new way to represent value. One common token implementation is something called a stablecoin. And so Bitcoin is very volatile, Ether is very volatile, and so people wanted to exchange value on blockchains. And so somebody came up with a proposal, they coded it, and they said, you know, here's a token that will keep the value of $1 US. And so people are exploring things where they can transact on blockchains in a safe manner without compromising their value in the long scheme of things. In the token space, there's two types of tokens. So there's one that's fungible. And so fungible implies that you can divide it by any amount of numbers, or by some amount of number. So for example, right now Bitcoin is around $50,000. And so say I can't buy an entire Bitcoin, I should be able to buy 0.1 Bitcoin or 0.01 Bitcoin and still have my value be represented by a fungible token per se. And so then on the Ethereum blockchain, people are creating a lot of different currencies. And so the stable coins can be divided by a ton. I feel like I'm using the wrong word. So stable coins can be used as fungible tokens and to exchange value around. The opposite of that is something called a non-fungible token. And so people are also using the code to represent other types of assets on the Ethereum blockchain. And so an example of this can be trading cards, it could be digital images. And so those things you can't divide and split up. And so, if I have a trading card, if I rip it up in half, it loses its entire value. And so people have found a way to apply code to represent that on blockchains. And so what we're seeing is, these non-fungible things show up on blockchains. I think eventually we'll start seeing houses or other types of assets be represented on blockchains as well with these non-fungible token implementations. Why would somebody want a house on a blockchain? Maybe they want to borrow against it using these cryptocurrencies as well. And so we're seeing these types of things pop up in the space, and I wanted to give you a quick overview on that. It's not just developers that are building stable coins or these things on top of blockchains. We're starting to see governments and centralized banks also adopt cryptocurrencies in some way or another. And so there is the open source community, which are software developers around the world that are building different financial tools to interact on the cryptocurrency space. With that, I think banks and governments are paying attention, and they're like, hey, we need to do something similar. We need to be able to participate in this financial market that is no longer bounded by governments and banks. And so we're seeing a lot of banks also apply smart contracts and rules to the cryptocurrency space to issue their own digital currencies. And so Bank of Canada, for example, might use smart contracts to create a central bank digital currency, and then have that somehow be available in the Ethereum ecosystem or on the Bitcoin ecosystem so that people can exchange value as intended. The other area of cryptocurrency that's picking up a lot of steam is called Decentralized Finance. And so we're seeing a lot of the functions that banks normally provide start appearing on the Bitcoin blockchain, on the Ethereum blockchain. And so people are able to lend money and earn interest. They're able to borrow money and earn interest. And so these are all services that are common in the banking infrastructure, but we're now starting to see them pop up in the cryptocurrency space as well. So I'll pause there for questions. I feel like that was a lot of stuff related to cryptocurrency. So any questions here?
Mehran, I've had the benefit of asking you so many questions on crypto before, but and I'm not sure this one that I have previously struggled with, and I'm still kind of struggling with, is one that resonates with others. But I've always wondered, why would I want to hold a dollar in a token if I can just hold a dollar in any other way? What's the benefit of holding it in cryptocurrency as a stable token in cryptocurrency?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And so stablecoins are a fairly new concept. I would say they've been around for a handful of years. And what we're starting to see is different use cases come out in the cryptocurrency space with specifically stablecoins. So one of the big use cases is being able to send money around the world without going through a bank, right? And so say you're trying to pay for a service around the world. Typically, you have to use a credit card and pay 3-4% per transaction that you're taking on a currency that's not on the cryptocurrency space. But instead, if you do the transaction in stablecoins, you might be able to do it for a lot less. So that's one big use case, so international money transfer. Another use case is, so in the decentralized finance space, we're seeing a lot of protocols pop up that allow people to trade currencies. They allow people to lend and borrow different currencies. And I think stablecoins are becoming a big kind of factor in the decentralized finance space. And so to participate in a lot of the innovation that's happening in the cryptocurrency space, stablecoins are becoming a way to do that without being exposed to the volatility of Bitcoin and Ether. So that's another reason why people are keeping their value in stablecoins. I think a use case that's popping up quite often is when governments are not able to keep their country currency stable. So if their currency is going through a lot of inflation, if the value is not competing or not retaining its value, and so maybe every year the currency of a country gets deflated, a lot of people are losing the value of their currency. And so what we're seeing is a lot of people are asking to get paid in stablecoins, or they're converting their country currency into a stablecoin so that they can actually retain the value of what the money is worth. And then when they do need to spend it, they may convert it later on. To retain the value of their currency is another reason people are using stablecoins as well in countries that are experiencing volatile country currencies.
Thank you for indulging me there, Mehran. Handing over to Fabrizio.
Hi, thanks. I was wondering how much of a deterrent is in transacting tokens across countries, let's say, the fact that there might be fluctuations in the exchange rate, and how is that being taken care of?
That's a great question. So right now, blockchains, because they're open to anyone in the world, there are fluctuations in how many people use the technology at the same time. And one of the limiting factors of blockchain right now is if too many people try to use Bitcoin at the same time, or too many people try to exchange tokens at the same time, the transaction fees can be very high. And so I think the simplest transaction on a blockchain is to send money from one account to another. And that can range anywhere from like $1 to 10 to 20 to 30. And recently I've seen some transactions go up to $50 per transaction. And so there is a scalability challenge right now with more and more people jumping onto the blockchain space. A way that the software developers that are building the Ethereum blockchain and building the Bitcoin blockchain are looking at are ways to, I guess, offset that cost in a way. So they're looking at scalability solutions. And I think in the next few years, we'll start seeing those be implemented in the main protocols that will alleviate a lot of these high transaction costs, given that more and more people are joining. So that's one way. The other thing is people are exploring, I guess, layer 2 solutions. So in that scenario, they have a different way of moving the value without having their customers experience the high transaction fees. And so there's a few ways that I guess the developers in the blockchain space are tackling to figure out how to reduce the costs. yeah, that's one of the challenges that we have right now in the blockchain space.
Thank you, Mehran. I'm seeing more questions come in. If colleagues want to take the floor, feel free. I have Yaman, Gladys, Paul. If any of you want to take the floor, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Martin. Is it okay?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Martin.
of course.
Yes. So my question is more in general with the invention of CBDCs, so the central bank digital currencies. Do you believe or know of any use cases where this could help the United Nations mission to overcome the last mile problem? And what I mean by the last mile is if we use traditional payment methods now, so EFT or mobile wallet, sometimes we have problems with the current methodologies to reach the beneficiaries of the UN, so the farmer on the ground. And what I've read about CBDCs is that the central bank of each country would make it so that every citizen in that country would have a wallet, and that would meld really well with the United Nations. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great point. And so I think what we're seeing different countries explore is that use case. So I think there was actually an example or an experiment done in China where China had issued blockchain wallets or cryptocurrency wallets to a lot of their citizens. I don't think it was all of their citizens, but it was north of like a few hundred mil. And in like 1 or 2 transactions, they were able to distribute their country's CBDC to all of those wallets at the same time. And so that's a tremendous example of how this technology can be used to distribute funds to a large group of people at the same time. There are groups that are working on the last mile problem. And so, for example, there is a group that came out of WFP, I believe, called Building Blocks, and they're figuring out ways to capture different tokens in a cryptocurrency wallet. And so what the use case there is they're usually set up in refugee camps. The people in the refugee camps have a mobile phone of some kind, and in the mobile phone they have a blockchain wallet, and then some of the services and some of the I guess goods that they receive in the refugee camp can be transacted as a token as well. And so we're seeing, on one side of things, people helping people in these markets get more familiar with smartphones and the idea of transferring value with phones. And then we have governments on the other side looking at ways to use cryptocurrencies and CBDCs in these efficient manners. So I think China is just one example. Building Blocks is just one example. We're seeing a lot of these types of use cases play out in different parts of the world.
And I'm seeing a thumbs up from Martin there. So thanks for that, Mehran. I'm passing on a question from Gladys, and she's wondering, what is the reason for the underlying difference in market value between Bitcoin and Ether? Is it linked to the governance, or what is driving that?
That's a great question. There's a lot of theories out there. I think one of the ones that really sticks with me. So Bitcoin was the first blockchain platform that came out and also solved the ability to send value across the world. And so it has like this first to market advantage that Ethereum, for example, doesn't have. And so I think a lot of people resonate with the fact that I can't keep my money safe at home. I can't keep my money safe at the banks. And so Bitcoin became a very viable alternative for them. And so with the first mover advantage, with the simple use case that it follows, I think the Bitcoin ecosystem and the Bitcoin blockchain has picked up a lot of traction. The Ethereum blockchain, in contrast, it's a solid platform. People can build on top of it. They're innovating different types of currencies, different types of financial services, different types of supply chain use cases on top of it. But I think, from an ecosystem perspective, there's so many different things going on the Ethereum blockchain. It makes it harder to understand. And so people are often intimidated by that vast amount of kind of activity that's happening in the Ethereum ecosystem. And so that's probably the biggest reason that I can think of, like people just don't get it. Whereas Bitcoin is very simple to explain. it's a blockchain where you can move value around and that's it. Whereas Ethereum probably takes a few sentences to explain, and if you're like me, after the first 2 sentences, I zone out. So I think that's playing a big role in the adoption for different blockchain platforms.
Thanks for that, Mehran. And I'm pleased to say that Gladys and the team at EFAT have adopted Ether, so they did not give up after the first 2 sentences. Well done, you guys.
Nice.
I'm inclined to say let's move on to the next chapter.
Sounds good. So the next chapter is just going to briefly cover wallets. So a lot of us have seen Bitcoin, we've seen the Ethereum blockchain, but it's not very clear to someone that's new to this space how to actually interact with the Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain. And so, I wanted to describe, I think this was an experience that I went through, some of my colleagues at our UNICEF's blockchain team also went through. At our prior job, we got lucky and we had a Bitcoin ATM in our lobby downstairs. And so I saw it for the first time and I was like, what is this? Why would I put my money into this machine? I had a friend that was working on the blockchain team at my company at the time. And so she had helped me walk through the process. And so, I approached the machine, I saw the price, and when I did see this price, 1 Bitcoin is $500. I'm like, wow, this is too high, And so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna put $20 into this machine and figure out how to actually get this Bitcoin to me. So my friend was like, okay, this is the process you need to follow. You need to give your number to this machine and it's going to text you something to verify that you're actually a real person. And so, I did put my number in, it sent me a text, I put that number back into the machine. And then once that happens, it asks me if I want to buy Bitcoin or sell Bitcoin. And so I'm like, I don't have any Bitcoin, let me buy some. And then it asked me, do I have a Bitcoin wallet? And luckily my friend was there with me, but if she wasn't, I probably would have stopped right here and been like, yeah, I don't know what a wallet is, and kind of paused. And so my friend was like, oh, you have to download this app, which represents your identity on the blockchain. And that identity is going to be storing your Bitcoin on your behalf. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but okay, let's try this out. So I download this app. It tells me that I need to show a QR code to this ATM. And so my friend walks me through the app, figures all of that stuff out. And then the ATM actually has a camera. And then it's like, put your phone in front of the camera and we'll scan its QR code. And so I went through that process. It's this weird glowing camera, put some cash into it. And so, there's a sketchy little input thing where I had to put my $20 bill in. I think it took me a few times to actually get the $20 in, and I was able to see that $20 at that time was worth 0.03 Bitcoin. And I could have added more money, but this was a new technology to me. So I was like, I'll take it slow. And then this screen pops up and I guess something kicks off in the back end that sends the Bitcoin from the ATM to my the new mobile wallet that I had. And then it prints out this receipt. And so yeah, over time, I guess my colleague captured how Bitcoin grew while they were at the firm. But yeah, that was a very complicated process, and I still didn't understand what wallets were. And so today I just want to briefly walk you through what a blockchain wallet is and why we will see a lot of people start having their own blockchain wallet. And so, we said that blockchains store information, they're able to track value, they're able to track data. What if you want to read and write information to the blockchain? And so what blockchains effectively are accounts that represent a person or an entity on these networks. And so to send value, to write value to the blockchain, you need a blockchain account, and that account is effectively called a wallet. Blockchain wallet tracks who you are in some sense, like not your actual identity, but it just knows like, this identifier is this person. And then it tells you the balance of that person or entity. And it also has all of the transactions that they made with the blockchain. And so when I say transaction, a transaction can be as simple as Mehran sending 1 Bitcoin to Johanna. And so wallets keep track of all of this information. And so, as you dive into the wallet space, you'll start seeing different types of blockchain wallets. There's stuff that you can download on your phone. There's stuff that you can print out and have, and store cryptocurrencies through something that is paper. There's browsers or like I guess websites where wallets can be created, and then there's hardware ones as well. Each one of them have different security implications, different levels of user experience, so some are easier to use than not. But the key thing is when you do create a wallet, you get like a username and password, and different wallets have different ways of managing that username and password. And so some organizations store your username and password on your behalf, and then some give you your username and password. But the key premise in the crypto space is if you don't have your keys, which are referring to your username and password, that means you don't have full control of the crypto that would be in your account. And so I just wanted to briefly touch on this, and happy to dive into this through some Q&A.
Thanks again, Mehran. Well, if there's any questions, we can take 1 or 2, but we're trying to circle back to why any of this matters to the UN. So I want to make sure we have time for that as well. But if there's any clarifying questions at this point, feel free. I'm sensing we're good to go.
Okay. Sounds good.
Don't you wish you had put more than $20 in there?
I do. I have a very simple rule. I just buy the same amount on the 1st of every month, and that's been okay. I think it's a simple way not to deal with the volatility, which can drive someone crazy. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. So blockchain, cryptocurrencies, wallets, why is all of this interesting to the UN? It introduces a new way to store values, distribute value in a way that is transparent and secure. And so one of the things that we did at UNICEF a few years ago is we set up something called a crypto fund, which was, I guess, a mechanism to hold, accept, and spend cryptocurrencies in cryptocurrencies. And UNICEF has a vehicle to make investments around the world into startups that are working with emerging tech. And normally we did that with the US dollar, but we had a donor that was interested in giving us crypto and making investments in crypto. And so in 2019, we set up the crypto fund. And with the crypto fund, we were able to accept crypto donations, sometimes through our national committees, which are the ones that are fundraising on behalf of UNICEF, or we've had some donors actually donate directly to UNICEF's wallets. And then once we get the crypto, we initially made our first investments into 3 blockchain startups. And then the blockchain startups use the crypto as salary. They use this crypto to pay transactions on behalf of their customers or their users. And we're seeing like different ways that these startups are actually using the crypto. And so the interesting kind of thing here was we were able to send 50 Ether, and 1 Bitcoin for I think less than $20 into 3 different countries very quickly. That was our first use case. And I think since then we've made more investments. I think last year in the summer, we dispersed close to 1,000 Ether to 8 different startups. And again, like we were able to move 1,000 Ether, which I think is close to $1 million, maybe more now, to 8 countries around the world for less than $20, $30 for the entire thing. So, we're able to move value across the world very quickly, very efficiently. And then on the donor side, they're able to see the crypto end up at the startups. We get to track how the startups are spending the crypto, and all that kind of stuff as well. And so we're getting this new level of transparency with some of the projects that we work on. And right now, our use case is for startups, but eventually we may want to pay vendors, we may want to pay employees. We want to, kind of guarantee, for example, that if countries are getting funds to distribute to their people, can we do that with cryptocurrency? Guarantee that the person that actually needs to receive the crypto actually receives the crypto. So we're starting our journey now, but I think there's a lot of upside for this. And we set up the crypto fund at UNICEF. We worked with our legal team, our finance teams, et cetera, to figure out what it takes for a public sector organization to interact with crypto. And so we did create some open source software as well to explain to the public how crypto is being used, to explain to our internal teams to keep track of the cryptocurrency wallets, see who's spending what with a portfolio tool. And then we're also working on a custody tool right now to actually accept and hold crypto on behalf of the organization. And so with these rails in place, I guess sky's the limit to see how cryptocurrency can be used to improve some of the services that UNICEF offers, but ultimately any public sector organization. But yeah, that brings me to the end of my conclusion. Open for any questions here before I guess we sign off.
Martin, go ahead.
Good. I didn't want to hog the floor. I want to say a comment on that last slide, because at the UN agency where I am, it's really hard to get our treasury type of people to embrace it like UNICEF has. In fact, I've written to your treasurer over at UNICEF on the LinkedIn domain just to compliment her, because the normal reaction for a typical treasurer in the UN is to, oh my God, a donor has given us cryptocurrency, we need to sell it and convert it to fiat. But the benefit that I see is that if you keep it in its crypto form, we can help our donors so much more, because it's easier to do the what we call donor reporting. That's a benefit that I think that's very important to the United Nations, but gets overlooked. Because you can let the donors participate in the progress of a project, make it transparent. What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, so an interesting thing that UNICEF's done is, so this did take a few years to get set up in the organization, but one of the key things that we were able to get across to our internal teams was whatever assets we receive in Bitcoin or in Ether has to be kept in Bitcoin and in Ether. And so, the kind of advantage there was that we're able to classify this as an asset. And so to explain it to UNICEF, we're like, imagine we're getting like 10 motorcycles as a donation, and then we're going to spend those motorcycles in some sense in the motorcycle as well. And so, we're able to keep the transparency and the security of crypto through that as well. So I guess, we're able to classify it as an asset that made our internal teams be happy. And then for our donors, they liked seeing the crypto being dispersed in crypto so that they can track how the crypto is being spent. And I think the other thing that we did add from a crypto perspective is when we did invest it in a startup, the startup also had to spend it in crypto for at least one jump as well. So that level of transparency we normally don't get. And I think, donors, UNICEF, et cetera, are finding that, yeah, this is a great way to track how funds are being spent at a UN organization. But I think keeping it in the crypto was a powerful step towards that.
Who's next?
Johanna, I raised my hand.
Go ahead.
Mehran, while transacting some funds from, let's say, UNICEF headquarters to some startups in different countries, or even UNICEF offices in different countries, do you have to be concerned about some government restrictions? I believe, and if my understanding is correct, some governments are not so much in favor of accepting crypto-based transactions. Am I right? And if so, well, how are you dealing with that?
Yes, absolutely. And so we do have startups around the world, and there's a due diligence team that we have to make sure that they're groups that we can invest in. We have another due diligence process on our side where we actually explore the crypto regulations in the countries that we may send crypto to. And if anything gets flagged, then we don't make the donation. And then on the startup side, we also ask them to explore the crypto regulations and make sure that everything's legal on their side as well before we do the cryptocurrency transactions. And so we haven't sent crypto to any country that has deemed it illegal at this time.
So then a follow-up question is that in your opinion, when the world would be very open to accept crypto transactions?
So I think a lot of the work that happens through UNICEF is like there's a lot of interest from ministries and governments to do things with crypto, but some of them want to do it in a closed manner, and some of them want to do it through a sandbox, and some of them are more open than not. And so we're seeing a lot of these countries experiment, and I think part of that is because a lot of these countries are not sure if they're going to issue their own CBDC, if they're going to allow Bitcoin to become, one of the major players or major currency players in their country. And so I think they're trying to figure out how to do this properly before they actually jump in full force. So we're seeing the interest. I think we'll see it play out in different ways, but ultimately it'll converge, and I think that just takes time.
Thank you, Mehran. I see thumbs up there, always a good sign. Gustavo from the UPU, I saw you briefly on here. Do you want to come and take the floor for your question?
Yes, thank you, Johanna. So my question is in regards to some issues, even personally, I'm having when using cryptocurrencies and different wallets. I think there is a problem when you want to open a cryptocurrency wallet in one country or another. And I think the physical world actually meets the limitation in the virtual world. And nowadays, they ask you for different identities, papers, and sometimes you even have to validate your identity several times in order to have a wallet. Even here in Switzerland, after 2 or 3 months, I'm still unable to open some of the wallets that here they offer. So do you foresee maybe having through the UN an initiative to have a common identity to bring a more easiness for transferring cryptocurrency from different countries around the world, and also probably in partnership with the private sector? Because I don't think this is just my problem. I think probably it's a common problem.
Yeah, so onboarding people into the crypto space is definitely a challenge. And this part of it is governments trying to figure out how to accept crypto and accommodate crypto for their monetary policies. So I don't know if the UN will be a driving factor in helping everyone set up blockchain wallets, but I think they'll be part of the conversation, right? So they'll say because I guess the UN has this global perspective to see how different countries are accommodating and adopting crypto. And then when other countries approach us, we can say here's what's worked, here's what hasn't worked. Now you kind of drive it as your country, and we can't really play a role there. I think another thing that we'll see is innovation on the crypto side to make it easier to transact purely in crypto as well. So you can hold your assets in crypto, you can keep your money in crypto, and then maybe there's products built on top of it, maybe Visa credit cards or ability to take out loans, all that kind of stuff, without having to fully exit into the market that you live in. So I think we'll start seeing more innovations with that. I've seen some blockchain protocols start applying for money licenses in the UK to make it easier for people to figure all that stuff out. But yeah, definitely a challenge that the developers in this space are working on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gustavo, and thank you, Mehran. I think we are just out of time. So I'm going to say thank you for take a breath. We're done. Thanks for answering all our questions. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. It is so helpful to tap into it.
Yeah, no worries. Happy to continue the conversation. You can email us at blockchain@unicef.org. I think, yeah, or message Johanna and she can make the connection
That's right.
as well.
Message Johanna and she can make the connection. You will be sharing your contact details on the slide deck, which will be on the UNIN website.
Awesome.
And what I also want to put on here is the link, just a little plug for the Atrium. That's the blockchain learning platform that has been developed under the UNIN umbrella by Mehran, his colleagues, some colleagues from UNDP, some colleagues from WFP, lots of case studies in there. I think there's code on there, and it's also a great place to ask any of these questions. I think we're revamping the Atrium, Mehran, is that correct? So a new functionality coming soon.
Yes, so right now we share a lot of projects across different UN agencies on the platform. So UNICEF's uploaded their work, World Food Program's uploaded their work. And so it's a nice place to dive in and understand who at the UN has done what with crypto and blockchain. We've also have a lot of learning resources and material there. So right now it's very focused for people that are new to the space or people that are project managers in this space. The next version is going to be more hands-on. So how to write smart contracts is what we're focusing on now. And I think it'll be an interesting thing that the UN does. We'll have like a blockchain platform. You'll be able to write smart contracts on it and really get hands-on with some of this tech in the next version.
Very excited about that. A big thank you from our side also for kind of driving the development of these resources and making them available to everyone. It is really appreciated. And with that, thank you to everyone who's still here. Mehran, it's been such a pleasure. Wishing you a good day and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
See you soon.